Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Bart Show, and this is my segment called The World's Most Interesting People, which means, sir,
I have a
you
high
should get a
bar.
trophy
Well, have
for
I earned anything yet?
for being one of the world's most interesting
Oh,
people.
that's nice to know. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to earn my way into this.
You know what? I picked you
Well,
because of the woman that you are enamored with,
ah,
of your
yeah. Does my wife
muse.
know about this?
She does not.
Ah, tell me.
Do we need to stop and
No,
restart
no,
the
no.
recording?
Dive in, and I'll see if I know
But I
her.
feel like you
Uh-huh.
and I have a common
Oh,
woman in our life
I think we do.
that we admired,
Yes.
and they may have shaped,
Yes.
if not a little bit, our life, our entire life.
Yes.
Tell us about this society you work for and who this mysterious woman that I have a crush on
Yes.
is.
The society is the Atlas Society, and this mysterious woman wrote a book called Atlas Shrugged. So the society is named after that. Atlas Shrugged. Atlas is the great Greek mythology
Right.
figure holding up the world, right? So not to give away the book,
I didn't
1957.
listen. I didn't get the cover of that book until years later. I
Oh,
read it.
oh, what the purpose was? Yeah, the
It,
cover. Yeah.
it's just
Well,
certain books are so on point, like Think and Grow Rich. You're like, I don't really get it yet. I'm not going to tell you a thing, but you know what? Maybe it'll come to you, Napoleon Hill. Think of Napoleon
she
Hill.
says if this figure is holding up the world, what would be the equivalent in human life? Who actually makes the world go round? Who builds things? Who creates things? Not just business people, scientists, artists, engineers. And she said they are the ones, and not everyone's the same, so we can't assume everyone has the same morals or
They meaning
ambition.
the people,
Yeah. And so she designated these people are like, these are really important people who hold up the world and make it go. And we should admire them, not envy them.
and
And
not
maybe we should kind of leave them alone, not tax and regulate them to death. And now, if they shrug, however,
shrug.
meaning if they don't care anymore, if they don't give a damn, if they quit, what might happen to the world? So that's without plot spoilers, that's the
Well,
premise.
okay,
And
so
1957,
57, the
I
book.
didn't read it until I wasn't born till 59. So I read it about set 1979 or so.
So to backstory,
Yeah.
I read it, Atlas Shrugged, on a train in college,
Hmm.
and it's a 700 or 800 page book,
It's
right?
a long book.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was committed.
Yeah.
Maybe the last 50 pages, I'm like, I feel like I kind of know where this is going.
Hmm.
Same thing with the Fountainhead, right? You
Yeah.
can get the general premise,
Yeah.
but it kind of helps
Yeah.
when you have characters in fiction
Yes.
become the John Galts. It kind of helps when
Right.
you have people that you go, that's like my Aunt Sally.
Yeah.
Or that's my brother
Right.
who's always a
Right.
cificant. He's
Right.
never worked a day in his life. He wants to be a trust fund baby. It really pulls it together.
Yeah.
But here's my question, and why I've interviewed you is I think that book is really, really relevant today.
Me too.
And some people go, oh, it's an old book.
Mm.
But I heard Ted Cruz talk about it in the last election
Yep,
cycle.
he
And I'm
did.
like, wait a second, if all these politicians are reading it, am I the only one secretly that still has a crush on Ayn Rand?
Just a couple of interesting measures. It's one of the few books that old that you can still get in hardcover, meaning the publisher still publishes it in hardcover.
Wow.
It sells millions of copies every year. So it's relevant in that regard. It's probably the most, how could I put it? The most American, pro-American in a way book. And when people read it, and it's probably by word of mouth, because the intellectuals don't like it. It's not university professors wouldn't give it.
Really?
Yeah, so it's most of it's word of mouth. That was true of the Fountainhead too. The Fountainhead was made into a movie in 1949 with
Yeah, I've seen the
Gary
black and
Cooper.
white.
So
Yeah, yeah.
she was very famous in her time. I think, frankly, unfortunately, she's become less famous. But I wrote a book recently called "Where Have All the Capitalists Gone?" And by capitalists, I mean pro-capitalists, including someone like her.
Right.
Well, the first answer is they're all dead.
The
But
real.
the sad answer is, where are their progeny? Why aren't there people like me and others who take those books and take those ideas? But others would be like Friedman, Hayek, Mises, the usual suspects in economics.
Right.
But she uniquely defended capitalism as a moral system. She said, everyone knows it produces the goods. Everyone knows it's practical, but no one will admit or explain why it's moral, or they don't know what moral means.
That's a
They
great
say, well, it
question.
helps the poor or something like that. She basically says, no, it's the system that permits the best and the brightest to survive and flourish, and that's good for all of us.
So you say moral. I hear
Yeah.
this word all the time because
Yeah.
I'm an expert witness. What's ethical? What's moral?
Yes.
Is it moral to let them starve? Is it moral
Right,
to let
right.
them kill babies? They throw that around,
Right.
and no one can agree
But
on
they know
what
it's because it
ethics
motivates
is.
people.
It
That's why.
motivates people.
Totally.
So they're using it as a manipulative term
Totally.
to get them to do their way.
Put it this way, if economic abundance motivated people, everyone in the world would be pro-capitalist. They're not. So it's a mystery. So why?
Why?
Despite this cornucopia of abundance, are people not all pro-capitalist?
Well,
Worse
maybe
than that, Bart. Why are they like flirting with socialism again? Is there not a 100-year track record of socialism being brutal, and yet AOC and others are proudly saying I'm a socialist? That
it's
is
a little
remarkable.
scary for
Yeah,
us that are real
yeah,
capitalists. But here's a question. I watched, as you all did, COVID,
yeah,
how much the stock market was
yeah.
manipulated,
Right.
how much society was literally manipulated. I'm an investor. I own real estate. I was like, wait a second, this isn't capitalism.
No,
There is some
no,
forces at work
no.
keeping that stock. Now,
Right.
I'm a miniature investor. I'm nobody like you, professor of economics. But I feel like we're being
To
manipulated,
your advantage.
and I'm not.
Yeah.
Is it really a free market now? And does that exist in any economic political sphere? Because
Well,
I feel like it doesn't after a few hundred years.
it's a mixed system.
Okay.
So I would never say, we don't have any capitalism anymore. I would put it this way: the beneficial kind of opulence we see. I mean, in a hotel, we're at the Mirage right now. At a hotel like this, you see this enormous opulence, totally due to the capitalist elements that are still here.
Hmm.
But those elements are being squeezed out. I mean, historically, they've been squeezed out in the past. They've been totally gone in places like the Soviet Union,
Right.
Cuba, North Korea. So is the U.S. moving away from capitalism? Yes. But what's interesting, Bart, is in the 80s and 90s, we were moving toward capitalism. Reagan, Thatcher, the
Yep.
whole Reagan revolution, the fact that the Soviet Union disbanded in 91.
They
the
just
whole
gave
trend,
up.
Yeah, but the whole trend was very nicely toward capitalism. And then about turn of the century, I mark 9/11, there's various,
Okay.
last 20 years have been going the other way, which is
Wow.
very disturbing
But we've
because
had
the evidence is so overwhelming that this is the great system.
so 53, Ayn Rand created this book, who's not
57, yeah,
57,
Atlas, yeah.
who's not an American-born citizen, right?
No, born in Russia, born in Soviet Russia,
Uh,
1905.
so I have
So she's 12 during the revolution.
So I have two best friends. One of them you met here today who's helping us. But maybe he's number 2 or 3. He may be able to hear this. But the other best friend was born in the Ukraine,
Uh-huh.
near Chernobyl.
Yeah.
He got out at
Yeah.
7, and he is rich,
Yeah,
and he's gay,
Yeah,
and he's happy,
right,
he's
right.
Republican, and he loves this country. And why do some immigrants love this country more than those that are born
I
here?
see the
Because
contrast, I know.
they've seen what's up.
They do.
How did she come here? And I have so many questions about her because she mentors some amazing people. She has
Yeah.
a very controversial life. She was
Yes.
single. Nobody knows about her sexuality. She just seems to be a
She
mysterious
did marry. She
figure.
married a guy named Frank O'Connor. She was married for
Okay.
50 years or so.
But she had all these people around. Like she
Yes,
held these
yes.
forums and
She influenced people
chambers.
like Galen Greenspan.
Yes.
She influenced people like Nathaniel Branden, who was the self-esteem guru in California for
Right.
years. The self-esteem movement was Branden, and he worked with her in the beginnings. Yeah. So,
So
Martin
beginning of
An-
the economics
Yes.
movement, beginning of the
Yes.
self-help movement,
Yes.
which I'm in.
Yes.
a
I
your
attribute the
generation.
whole 80s and 90s, not just to her, but the whole milieu that Hazlitt, Mises, Rand, Friedman, who were all around at the same time.
Her mentor.
They made the last 20 years of the century what it was by their ideas. They were the combination of all of them: the economic argument, the moral argument, the political argument. It was enormous. It was an
How
enormously
does
great
somebody
group.
with no social media, no TV network, she a couple of
Well,
books?
people did used to read books then.
Is it like L. Ron Hubbard did in the early? You just come to their
Possibly,
house and
something like
everybody
that,
showed up
yes.
and they came and had these
Yeah.
big,
Some
like
of it,
kind of like Amway, but with
Some
philosophy.
of it was the books start selling well. Then she gets campus talks. Then
Okay.
she gets TV interviews. I mean, she would be on the Phil Donahue show a couple times. She was
Oh,
on
I
the
did-
Johnny
I
Carson
didn't even
show.
know that.
She was on the Johnny Carson show 3 times because they kept inviting her back because the audience demanded it. Now that's hard to believe. This is like 1962, 63, 64, Bart.
Wow.
Yeah, Johnny Carson.
So she was a celebrity at the time.
Total celebrity. Yeah, she had the Look magazine and Time. They would
Wow.
do whole profiles. What is this Ayn Rand movement? Why particularly is it attractive to young people who are idealists? And if you imagine in the 60s, who were the idealist students? The one burning down the campus in Berkeley and all
Well,
that.
smoking pot and having
but
beers,
there were
right?
these other Goldwater type, Rand type college
Oh.
kids who were future Reaganites
Interesting.
who loved Ayn Rand.
Who ended up being in the cabinet
Yes.
and being up running the government.
Yes.
Does it take a generation to make change?
Well, I think it takes at least 20 years to, yeah. I mean, one way of looking at it is 1957 is not that far ago. So the fact that objectivism and her ideas haven't swept the culture yet, but to the extent they did infiltrate the culture
right.
in the 80s and 90s, we had good results. So that's what Atlas Society, we're mostly geared to young students. And of course, I teach students at Duke, so I'm in that milieu. So we focus on younger kids, not these old fogies around here at Freedom Fest, who are perfectly fine. But
I saw some young people here, and
There
they
are
had
some
some
young people
very
here.
interesting ideas. at this
The older
conference.
people who have wealth now, as you know, want to protect it, understandably.
Right.
So they want to hear stories about why is my wealth under attack? Why is inflation 9%? Should I buy gold or not?
Death tax, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
So issues of what kind of political system protects your wealth, but also when the system's going south and really going bad, how can you immunize yourself? That's kind of
But
stuff
is that
we're
not the
interested
same
in.
conversation? Now, I was born in the 60s. I'm a
Yeah.
little slightly younger than you.
Yeah.
Over the last every few decades, the older people want to hold on to their wealth and their family and pass it down. The young people are broke. They're in universities
Right.
and they want change and they want free love and they want sex and they want to party. Is that really changed that much over every 20, 30
No,
years?
no. I think the main thing is, are young students willing to engage intellectually? That worries me. The attention spans and things like that. I think,
haven't seen that.
well,
And all my comedy
it's a
friends,
bit worrisome. Yeah.
I'll take it back to just something simpler. All my comedian friends that tour on campuses won't tour on campuses anymore.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
me as
Right.
a comic, there's certain jokes I won't say
Right.
anymore. And
Right.
but why
Well,
do
the
the
whole
college
assault
ca-
on
but
comedy
there
is
is no
awful.
conversation being had.
No.
It's I want you to give back the money from the Netflix special because you offended me.
Yes.
That's their perception of a conversation. That's not how it was in 1957 through 60, right?
No, they were more intellectually engaged in the 50s and 60s, but the ideas were anti-capitalist. Here's how I'd put it. When I see the most brilliant students, the most well-read students, the good news is they are pro-capitalist. It's the emotional kind of whiny, I'm a victim, though that kind of young person
Right.
is not so intellectual. So the good news would be if, fast forward 20 years, the first group should be more predominant. I mean, they're more serious. They know their ideas. They're not as they're not as big in numbers.
But we got a problem.
Yeah,
The people that are whiny now have a microphone as
They
big as
do.
people that have studied.
they do, and they get the vote out. I know. So what's wrong? I mean, look at our current president, a complete dotard. I mean, the guy
Did you
cannot
say
put together
dotard?
dotard. Look it up. It's a great word. A feeble-minded, mostly corrupt, but I mean, it could be seen as emblematic of the times. Why would that person be leading America?
Right.
America's gone wayward here. This is not good.
Like he's everyone's third choice. Like,
I'm not saying Trump was the paragon of virtue and all that, but this is an incompetent, old, nasty, racist guy. That should not be the leader of America. So anyway,
So
we're
back to the
hopeful
college
at the Atlas
kids.
Society.
What I was saying was
Things
that,
will get
these
better.
people that don't deserve a microphone have millions of followers because they're haters. In 1985, no one would listen to them. They'd have to
Right.
book a hall. They'd
Right.
have to do what Ayn Rand did. They'd have to
Right.
show up.
Right.
And now their voices seem
Yes.
louder than the reasonable people.
Well, you could say there's a cyclicality to this, and we will come back. But you're right. If you transported yourself back to the mid '80s, you would be embarrassed to be pro-socialist. You would be embarrassed to be, pro-Soviet or pro-Chinese.
Well, it was the age of Michael Gecko, and who doesn't love money?
Michael Milken and Gordon Gecko and
Now,
you know,
Michael
Ford,
Milken's
yeah.
real. Gordon Gecko's not.
I
We're
know,
in the
I know,
hotel
I
thanks
know.
to Michael Milken, by the way.
He built
This-
the Mirage. Yeah,
no, he didn't
or
build it.
financed
He
The
financed it through
LBO,
junk bonds
I was a big
in
defender of Milken at the
1986.
time. We sent him Atlas Shrugged.
Did he read it?
And his handlers wrote back and said he has 12 copies already. So we were not the only ones to think of this. Hey, Mike, here's a defense of yourself. But I don't know. It didn't
Let me
work.
take a short break. I
Yes.
want to get
All right,
to
Bart.
your personality,
Oh,
which is
good,
really
okay.
interesting.
When I
And
know whether I'm a latent criminal or not.
hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. My name is Bart Baggett. In addition to being a podcast host, I wrote a couple of books, and I want to give one of them away to you right now. It's called The Magic Question: How to Get What You Want in Half the Time. It is one technique, my favorite technique I use to make myself optimistic, to make myself happy, and to notice the good things in life. Now, you may not need it. You may be a happy person, but I know someone in your life probably does. So scoot on over to the domain magicquestionbook.com. Look for the button that says, hey, I'm a podcast listener. Give me the book for free. And we will either send it to your doorstep just for free shipping and handling, or you can download it and begin listening to it right now in audiobook or PDF file. It's my gift to you. I want you to be happier. I hope that the show brings you some joy and happiness and laughter. But learning how to control your brain and having your friends think better, man, it's the secret to being happy, to creating manifestation, to creating more stuff. But more importantly, how to get what you want in half the time. Pretty cool title. magicquestionbook.com. Look for the, hey, I'm a Bart listener. Give me the book for free. And thanks for listening. Back to the show. Okay, we're back. This is the Bart Show, and this segment is about the most interesting people in the world. And Richard, you should get a trophy. I'm going to send
Thank
you a little
you.
trophy. The most
Thank
interesting
you.
people in the world.
I'll hold you to that.
I mentioned that Ayn Rand, and by the way, for people, I have a lot of fans in other countries. It's not Ayn
It's
Rand.
not Ann. It's Ayn like mine.
It's A-Y-N.
She would like the idea that it rhymes with mine because she was very much of the view that you
Mine.
own your life and your property and be proud about
'Cause
that.
I-
It's mine.
I've been corrected when I say Ayn Rand. Like, no, it's Anne. And I'm like, no,
It's not Ann.
you're an
I mean,
idiot.
it's A-Y-N.
It's
so
confusing.
some
Anyway,
people call
when
it
you're
Ann.
Googling it, she wrote a series of amazing books on economics, which if you haven't read them,
And philosophy.
you're probably poor.
Yeah.
That's okay? It's a little mean, but maybe that would,
Spiritually poor.
they're spirit. They're also
They'll be spiritually enriched if they read her.
so. I included her handwriting, and the reason I included her
great.
handwriting,
Never heard
I
this.
was writing about I think
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
about people that were successful.
Yeah.
Like the idea that maybe your personality or
Oh, that's
maybe
great.
your mindset or
Yeah.
maybe all this self-help stuff, which she talked about,
Yes, very much.
would be a reason you were broke or happy or not, right?
Yes, yes.
So I
I would
found
agree with that.
that she had the personality trait of someone that was incredibly self-centered, or what she would say reason.
In a good sense.
Very positive.
Self-confident.
But here's the problem.
self-assertive.
When I described that personality,
Yes,
not her,
yes.
they like, oh, that person doesn't respond to emotions. That person doesn't
Right,
get
they're
moved.
robotic.
That person's not manipulatable. So
Yes,
therefore,
yes.
they're cold-hearted.
Interesting.
They're not
Yeah.
friendly.
Like Spock.
And that's very, very much like Spock, right? And that's not entirely untrue
No.
when we're
Well,
talking about the general public.
Yeah.
So when the problem with soft sciences like psychology or handwritten analysis is we're doing our best to describe a person and then stack traits on top of it.
Yes.
So she's
Yes,
reasonable,
that's interesting.
logical. So I don't think she's manipulatable. She may have empathy, but
Yeah.
she's not going to act on empathy unless it's in her best interest.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Good.
that's the way I would phrase that. So
Right,
when I was
good.
teaching this, I'm like, this is a great example of someone who literally uses the word reason, as well as she had good self-esteem. And I think pride was something that was important
Pride
to her.
is a
Like,
virtue
like,
thought. Yeah. Not
like,
a sin.
like I want people to respect me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But earned. So you're not
Earned
you're not a
pride.
braggart. You're not seeing yourself as valuable in the eyes of others. It's more like, hey, I've practiced these virtues. I should feel proud of myself. I shouldn't be humbling myself. But Bart, the other thing that's interesting is if you say someone is self-absorbed, self-centered, she was for rational self-interest. Rational self-interest, not
Self-interest.
craziness, right? But if you say self-centered, people think of that as you're a sociopath. You're antisocial. You're
Exactly.
going to be mean to others. You're going to want a dictatorship. Her view was she was, of course, for liberty and American constitutionally limited government. So she joined the idea of you should be proud of yourself. You should pursue your happiness. Very American type values. Not sacrifice yourself. Not let others sacrifice
Create
you.
boundaries.
Yeah. And that's why we have a free country. A free country because we're not sacrificial animals. We're independent beings.
Right.
We should feel confident. We're not running roughshod over others. We're not sacrificing, but and we deal with each other, mutual advantage to mutual benefit.
So
But it's still self-interested.
So pride and reason are two of those interesting emotions
Yeah.
that what I have studied is
Right.
some of the most successful people on
Yeah.
the planet
Yes.
have a big ego.
They do.
They have pride.
They
They
do,
want
yes,
respect. They're
yeah.
driven by status. And sometimes they make self-centered decisions, yet they
Yes.
hold their boundaries.
Yes.
That sounds like a narcissistic jerk
Well,
when I'm describing it right now.
Right.
But I'm saying that is what my research is
I
saying.
see, yes.
But I want to
Yeah.
be a little
So
more
that's
like
a good
that.
challenge to the self-interest argument.
But Richard, I
is-
want to be more like that because I
Yes.
want to have more money and resources for my family and
Yes,
friends.
but you can't do it if you think you're immoral. If you do all that and say, well, I'm doing this, I'm great, I'm assertive, I'm self-interested, however, I really feel guilty,
Well, that's
and maybe I should.
interesting.
So she's also against the idea of unearned guilt or unearned fear during the COVID thing. The two things to control people, if you don't have physical
A
force
gun
over
to their
them,
head.
guilty and fearful.
Wow, that
The
was
whole
the whole
COVID
last 2
thing
years,
was
wasn't
fear-
it?
Yes. And are you fearful enough? Are you scared?
I'm
Now we
really-
can control you. Shut
Wow.
down your business, go home, take a check from the IRS, and we'll have inflation later. Are you fearful enough yet?
They kind of
The
didn't
guilt
mention the
one-
last part,
The guilt
but we
one
all
is you
knew.
get business people going in, these woke capitalists, they feel guilty for their success. She hated that.
Wow.
She said, don't put up with envy. She said, Don't,
So
don't put up with people envying your success if it's earned success. I mean, if you're a fly-by-night Madoff
Right,
type, Madoff, she would say Madoff was not self-interested. She would say it was
And she would say he's going to destroy himself.
short term, he gets all this money.
Right.
She would say he's truly self-destructive.
Ah, those are small distinctions. I don't think the average person that wasn't a scholar would know that about human behavior. This is what's interesting. This was an economic conversation, but it turned into a human being conversation
Right. That's what Ayn Rand's all about.
because she's a humanist.
She's a
And then she
different
says,
humanist,
if you get a bunch
yes.
of humans together, you're
Yes.
going to have a sociology conversation.
That's right.
And who's going to end up on top?
Oh, she said, economics is fun. but it's really fun to talk about morality, psychology, motivation, money. Do I feel guilty for my life? Am I, do I have a good marriage? Do I have a good, I mean, the things of life. She once said her philosophy, objectivism, is a philosophy for living on earth happily, guiltlessly. And so there's no economics or gold standard in there, right? The other stuff.
So she saw it. This is what it is.
Yeah, and you should have a good pro-life in the sense of pro-happiness philosophy. Right. But you need capitalism to be happy. You need this kind of habitat for humanity.
You need to have
where you're free to do your thing.
Or you're poor. That's not good.
Well, yes,
let me look at your
poor, yes.
I never interested in this. So this is very interesting handwriting. I mean, super angular.
There's a lot of
angular handwriting means fast thinking, impatient with dumbass people, can't drive slow in the fast lane.
Oh God,
like it's super fast.
Really?
What that means is, if you have employees, and I'm sure you do, if they're methodical and they take too long to learn something, you get impatient.
I do.
So you need to understand that there are people that are procedural and people that are you're fast.
And you think it's the angular part?
The angular part, yeah. I mean, it could also be.
There's not a lot of curly cues or whatever they call them.
Which is super feminine, and it's not so much masculine femininity, but nurturing is more of a feminine quality.
Yes.
You're not more of a nurturer. You're more of a get the fuck out of the way. I want to get something done guy. Not very nurturing. Not really going to babysit my kids. Not in a bad way, but
that's good.
Here's an interesting trait. I have a really good friend who's one of very successful.
There's no cursive connectors either. They're just all separate.
Yeah, we don't do that much anymore. You have determination. There's a long Y's. You have a little bit of aggressiveness. You do have a slight need for attention. You also have a healthy ego. The R and the S are really large. Again, ego has always been something I found is real successful.
Being large reveals something.
Not arrogant. There's a distinction. Same thing in conversation. Healthy ego. I have boundaries. I'm worth it. I'm okay. Not, I'm the best person in the world, I need to be president. That's a little bit of a different thing. So very healthy there. Here's what's interesting is I've seen this trait in hundreds of writing. One person out of all the hundreds meets this definition. The other ones meet this definition. So I'm wondering if you're like the exception to the rule. So the downward T-bars tend to mean I like to be in charge, I like to control things, and if people are incompetent around me, I'll take charge. Generally a good quality, right? Unless they have sarcasm, which means that they nag. So my question is, are you one of the few that just likes to control because you're really the most incompetent one in the world, or do you sometimes nag and push and get your way?
I can be sarcastic and biting and witty, and is that part of the nagging?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So does that mean I straddle, but I have a little of both?
Maybe you're in between. But you get stuff done.
I tend to get things done.
It's a control thing. It's a leadership thing. Yeah. Well, my friend who runs a leadership institute, he was the most diplomatic person I've ever met.
Yes.
And no one would agree that he was bossy.
Yes.
But guess what? He was the boss.
Yes.
He was the owner.
Yes.
And everyone did what they said happily because
right.
he had so much diplomacy.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Bart. The trajectory of my career, I went from big corporations to small companies to my own company. So I think part of it is I want to be in control, but I don't really want to deal with people.
I think you're on this side.
Maybe I don't trust the idea that I don't like people and I don't want to bang heads. So let me just go down to and deal with reality straight,
Listen,
right? This research or that research.
I disagree. I don't think you dislike people. I think you dislike stupid people and people that are really slow. And if they're not competent to do the job, you feel like you have to do it or it wouldn't get done right. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Now, what you then have to do as a CEO is learn how to delegate and create systems so that the system can then handle that thing.
Or if you shrink yourself down seemingly to a small business, now you start having alliances with other groups and businesses like Atlas. So now you're picking your friends or colleagues. I think I've done that too.
Yeah.
Like Atlas Society would be an example of, well, I choose to deal with these people.
I want to deal with these people. I can have a role there.
I'm at Citicorp and I'm going to deal with this group of assholes over in lending. Could be something like that. Did I just swear? I'm sorry.
No, I like swearing. I was wondering if you had the Go to Hell K, which is the big defiance, which I have a lot of it. Everyone, a lot, but most Americans do. You know that whole archetype of like the cowboy, the John Wayne.
Yes.
That archetype.
I'm on my own.
It's such
it's
such an American archetype, though. It doesn't really meet other cultures, and I'm that way. I'm an entrepreneur. I ride a motorcycle.
It's individualism.
I do comedy. I want to offend people, and I want to.
Yeah, but you're not a recluse, and you're not
correct, and I'm not reckless. One would say that with my language. I'm not reckless, but I'm not.
If you were a
recluse,
I don't think I would meet you. I wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here either.
Yeah, you'd be in a cave somewhere. And
did I mention how smart you are? I think I did. How smart you are.
Nice
and this S, by the way, connecting is a fluidity of thinking. Now, I've hosted a lot of shows, but I've been on 1,600 interviews. And of those hosts, like Howard Stern, and Lori King, they all have this trait. So I think you would be a great podcast host and a great author
Oh,
because you have the fluidity of mind. Unfortunately, author's great. You have to deal with people. Podcast hosts, you might have to be around human beings, and some are going to be idiots.
right. And I have this bias that says, why should I interview people? I'm more interesting than them. So they should be interviewing me.
You know what?
No, people say to me, start a podcast. And I'm like, why? I'm the one who should be interviewed. Now, is
grant-
that arrogant?
I
That's
grant you
arrogant. That's
title
arrogant.
the world's most interesting person.
And the most arrogant. Because he
You're
just
not-
said that.
You're not the most arrogant. You remember
One
this
of
guy named
the-
Donald Trump? Let's. He had a lot of great qualities, but that one might have been a flaw.
Right. Arrogance would be something like unearned pride,
Unearned arrogance?
Unearned pride, unearned confidence. Yeah.
It's the most beautiful toilet ever.
What? It was a delight to meet you.
This is really fun. I didn't know how charming you would be.
And I
just
didn't know you until I looked you up beforehand. I did not know you are the signature expert. My gosh. Testimony.
Well, that's a weird thing because I'm
so-
trying to rebrand myself, but it's a good brand. I mean,
Yes,
unless you think it's hokey.
Yeah.
Sarah Silverman thought it was a
How
joke.
about,
and it wasn't
how about
fun.
something like you have a signature way of looking at life? It's your signature.
I love this
The
copywriter.
great chefs have signature dishes.
Signature moves. I have a signature.
Dishes. Give me your signature
How about
dish.
a signature interview style? How about that? Signature podcast.
You're a significant senior signature man. No, I'll put it that way. It was a delight to meet you.
We can be friends. Man.
Was
I
this
like you.
okay?
It was more than okay.
Did it help?
It was delightful because I'm a fucking geek for Ayn Rand. Like I seriously like, oh my god, this.
So-
I don't know if that was interesting to these guys.
So tell people to read my book. Where have all the capitalists gone?
Okay, let's do this for
And-
real.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a book. I want to
I
promote
do.
it. And how can they get it? And what's the title?
Yeah. So it's called Where Have All the Capitalists Gone? And you can get it on Amazon. Or
Audible?
you can get it. Yeah. Audible. Yes. And yes, you can get it in audio as well
I love
through
that.
Amazon.
Where have all the capitalists gone?
And came out last year, and it's very good, and it shows what capitalism is and why we're losing it and how to get it back. And it has a lot of Ayn Rand in it. It has a lot of Alexander Hamilton in it. It has a lot of supply-side economics in it. So part economics, part politics, part philosophy.
All right. Richard Salsman, everybody. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Bart.